think no contact is about getting over them. You think it's about healing, about moving on, about taking your power back. And yes, it is. But what if I told you that no contact does something else? Something so powerful, so unexpected that it shakes an avoidant to their core. What if I told you that the very person who ran from connection, who pushed you away, who made you feel like they never truly needed you, suddenly finds themselves spiraling in ways they never saw coming? Because here's what no one tells you. An avoidant doesn't break when you chase them. An avoidant doesn't break when you beg for them to stay. An avoidant doesn't break when you try to reason with them, when you tell them you love them, when you do everything in your power to prove you're worth staying for. No, an avoidant breaks when you disappear. Because let me tell you the truth about how they operate. When an avoidant pushes you away, they expect one thing. They expect you to still be there. They expect you to wait. They expect you to check in. They expect you to keep showing up, even when they tell you they don't want you to, because deep down, they don't actually believe they will lose you. That's why they run. That's why they detach. Because their entire life, they have learned one thing: people chase. People try to fix them. People fight for them harder when they create distance. But when you go no contact, when you actually vanish, when you remove yourself from the equation completely, something happens that an avoidant is not prepared for. For the first time in their life, they have to sit in the emptiness they created. For the first time, they don't have the safety net of your presence. For the first time, they are forced to deal with what they were running from all along. And let me tell you something that will shake you. Avoidants don't feel the loss immediately. They feel relief at first. That's right. You heard me. They feel relief. They convince themselves that space is exactly what they needed, that this was the right decision, that they were right to pull away. But then time passes and something shifts. That relief starts to feel empty. The silence starts to get loud. And for the first time, they realize something they never expected: you were actually gone. You weren't just a presence they could detach from and return to when it was convenient. You weren't just a fixture in their life who would always be there. You were a choice. And they let you go. And now they have to sit with that reality. And here's the part they never saw coming. Avoidants run because they think they don't need deep connection. They think they are better off alone. They think emotions, vulnerability, intimacy, it's all just too much. But when you go no contact, when you actually remove yourself, they realize something terrifying. They were lying to themselves. They did need you. They did feel safe with you. They did rely on you in ways they never admitted. And now it's too late. And here's where things get even more intense. Avoidants don't process loss like you do. When you lose someone, you feel it. You cry. You grieve. You want to talk about it. You process it in real time. But avoidants, they suppress it. They push it down. They pretend it doesn't matter. But you cannot escape grief forever. You cannot avoid emotions forever. And that's when it happens. Weeks later, maybe months later, when they least expect it. They wake up one morning and boom, it hits them. The realization, the weight of what they lost. And it's brutal. Because by the time they finally feel it, you've already adjusted. You've already started healing. And now they are stuck in their own private hell. They want to reach out, but they can't. They want to fix it, but they don't know how. Because here's the kicker: avoidants suck at repair. They suck at fixing what they've broken. Because apologizing means admitting vulnerability. Reaching out means confronting emotions they have spent their whole life avoiding. And this is where no contact breaks them, because for the first time, they have to sit in their OUN and mess. They have to deal with the fact that they are alone, not because they needed to be, but because they pushed away the one person who actually understood them. So if you're sitting there struggling with no contact, wondering if it's even working, let me tell you something. It's working in ways you cannot even imagine. You don't need to see it. You don't need to get a text. You don't need to hear from them, because the real work isn't happening where you can see it. It's happening in their mind, in their heart, in their subconscious. It's happening in those late nights when they reach for their phone and stop themselves. It's happening in those moments when they hear a song, see something that reminds them of you, and feel a pang in their chest they don't know how to name. It's just happening when they realize that for the first time in their life, they are the ones who lost someone who truly mattered. And that is the moment an avoidant begins to wake up. Not when you chase, not when you beg, not when you explain your worth to them over and over again. But when you make them experience the one thing they have never had to face before, a world where you don't exist in their life anymore. That's when they finally understand. That's when they finally feel it. And by the time they do, the power is in your hands, not theirs. You think when an avoidant leaves, it means they don't care. You think when they push you away, it means they don't feel anything. But let me tell you something that's going to shake your understanding of them to its core. Avoidants don't push you away because they don't care. They push you away because deep down they expect you to stay. They expect you to chase. They expect you to keep proving that you won't abandon them no matter how much they test you. This is how they've learned to survive. This is how they've learned to love. And that's exactly why no contact hits them in a way they never saw coming. Because here's the truth nobody tells you: avoidants don't believe in real loss. They don't believe people actually leave, not because they think they're so special, not because they think they're untouchable, but because their entire lives they have operated under one simple rule: people chase what they can't have. They've spent years seeing this pattern play out over and over again. They pull back and people lean in. They create space and people try to close the gap. They build walls and people climb over them. This isn't even a conscious game they're playing. It's a survival mechanism. It's the only way they've ever known how to relate to people. And because of this, when they push you away, they don't actually expect you to leave. They expect you to prove yourself. They expect you to break through their senses. They expect you to come back stronger. And so when you don't, when you actually vanish, when you actually give them what they thought they wanted, their entire worldview starts to crack. At first, it doesn't hit them. At first, they feel relief. Yes, relief. That's the part nobody wants to hear. You think that the second you disappear, they're going to crumble. No, they take a deep breath. They tell themselves this is exactly what they needed. They convince themselves that everything is fine, that space is good, that they finally have what they wanted. And you know what? For a short while, they actually believe it. They go about their days. They fill their time with distractions. They tell themselves they made the right decision. And if you're sitting there watching, waiting for a reaction, it'll seem like they're totally fine. But what you don't see, what they don't see, is that this is only temporary, because what an avoidant doesn't realize is that no contact doesn't just create space, it forces them to sit in the emptiness they were always running from. And this is where the breakdown begins. Slowly at first, a random moment of stillness when they reach for their phone out of habit, only to realize you haven't texted. A casual conversation with a friend where they say something that reminds them of you, and for the first time they feel a pang of feet. A quiet night alone when they realize there's nobody checking in on them anymore. These moments start as whispers, easily ignored, easily brushed off, but they build. And what was once relief slowly turns into confusion, then discomfort, then something far worse. Because what's really happening, what they never expected, is that they are starting to feel the loss. And here's where the real shock hits them. For the first time, they realize that the distance they created isn't a temporary game. It's not a test. It's not a cycle they can control, because every single time they've done this in the past, the person they pushed away always came back. Always. And suddenly they're facing something they've never had to deal with before: true, actual, irreversible absence. And this terrifies them, because now for the first time in their life, they have to ask themselves a question they've never had to face. Did I just lose something real? And let me tell you something that will make your jaw drop. Avoidants don't just realize they miss you. They realize that they underestimated you. They thought they knew how this would go. They thought they had you figured out. They thought they could push you away and still keep you close. But your silence is proving them wrong. Your distance showing them something they never considered you are not like the others. You are not a pawn in their emotional defense mechanism. You are not someone who will sit around and wait while they figure out their issues. And this realization, it messes with them in a way they cannot explain. Now they're left with a dilemma they never thought they'd face. Do they reach out? Do they risk vulnerability? Do they actually admit for the first time that they were wrong? Or do they sit in their pride and let you go even though it's killing them inside? And this is where the truth becomes undeniable. Avoidants don't fear losing you. They fear what losing you means about them. They fear what it says about their ability to love. They fear what it forces them to acknowledge about themselves, because now for the first time they can't just say they were protecting their space. They can't just say they were doing what was best for them, because if that were true, then why do they feel like something inside of them is breaking? And this is where your power lies. You don't get them back by chasing. You don't get them back by explaining. You don't get them back by proving your worth. You get them back by doing the one thing they never expected: removing yourself completely. Because at the end of the day, an avoidant expects you to be there no matter what they do. They expect you to stay tethered to them even when they create distance. But when you actually show them what life is like without you, when they finally feel the weight of that loss, that is when they wake up. That is when they question everything. That is when, for the first time, they realize they might have just pushed away the one person who truly saw them. And that realization It is more powerful than anything you could ever say. At first, they feel relief. Yes, relief. You don't want to hear that, but it's the truth. They walk away, create space, and for a moment they feel like they can breathe. The weight of emotional closeness is gone. The pressure is gone. The intensity is gone. And they tell themselves this is exactly what they wanted. They tell themselves they were right. They tell themselves that cutting off the connection was the best thing for them. And if you're watching from the outside, it will look like they're doing just fine. No tears, no regret, no second guessing, just a cold, detached acceptance. And that right there, that is what fools most people. That is what makes you believe that no contact isn't working. That is what makes you doubt yourself, because you expect an immediate reaction. You expect them to miss you right away. You expect them to panic the moment you're gone. But that's not how an avoidant operates. Because here's what's really happening. Avoidants don't process emotions in real time. They suppress. They push everything down. They avoid the discomfort of loss by pretending it isn't there. And at first they succeed. They distract themselves. They keep busy. They convince themselves that they feel lighter without the relationship. And for a short while, they believe it. But then something starts to shift. The silence, which once felt like freedom, begins to feel different. At first, it's just a small flicker of something, a moment of hesitation when they realize they haven't heard from you. A quiet evening when they instinctively reach for their phone only to stop themselves. A flash of curiosity when they wonder what you're up to, but quickly brush it off. Nothing major, nothing they can't ignore. But the moments start adding up. And then it happens. That first repang. That first hit of something they don't recognize right away. Maybe it's triggered by something small, a song, a scent, a random thought. Maybe it's completely unexpected. But suddenly they feel something they don't know how to name. And it's unsettling. Because remember, an avoidant doesn't like emotions. They don't know how to deal with emotions. They've spent years avoiding this exact feeling. But now, with you completely gone, the very thing they thought they want is turning against them. And they don't understand why. And here's where the real unraveling begins, because now they're confused. If walking away was the right decision, if space was what they truly needed, then why does it feel like something is missing? Why do they suddenly notice the absence of your presence? Why does the silence, which once felt peaceful, now feel empty? This is the part they never expected, because they always believed that creating distance would solve their discomfort. They always thought that running would make them feel better. But what they never realized, what they were never prepared for, is that the distance doesn't erase the connection. It magnifies it. And here's where the panic starts to set in. They don't know what to do with these feelings. They don't know how to process them. And because they can't deal with them, they try to bury them even deeper. They try to convince themselves they're fine. They try to distract themselves even more. Maybe they jump into work. Maybe they surround themselves with people. Maybe they even start dating again and hoping that if they can just replace you, they won't have to deal with the loss. But no matter what they do, nothing feels the same, because no contact isn't just about physical distance. It's about psychological distance. It's about emotional distance, about forcing them to sit in the very thing they've been running from their entire life, real, unfiltered loss. And let me tell you something that will make you rethink everything. Avoidants have spent their entire lives believing that emotions equal danger. That connection equals suffocation. That love equals loss of control. And so they run. They detach. They pull away before they can get hurt. But when you go no contact, when you truly remove yourself, something happens that they never saw coming. They don't just lose you. They lose the version of themselves that only existed when they were with you. And that is what breaks them. Because suddenly the world feels duller. Their experiences feel emptier. The things they once enjoyed don't bring the same satisfaction. And they don't understand why. But you do, because you know the truth they have been avoiding their entire life. Connection isn't a burden. Connection is what makes life meaningful. And now for the first time, they are facing the reality of what it means to be truly alone. Not the kind of alone they convinced themselves they wanted. Not the kind of alone that feels like freedom. But the kind of alone that feels like loss. The kind of alone that makes them question everything. The kind of alone that makes them realize that maybe, just maybe, they weren't as unaffected as they thought. And here's where it gets even more powerful. Because at this point, the avoidant is standing at a crossroads. They have two choices. They can keep suppressing, keep pretending, keep avoiding. But deep down, something has shifted. Deep down, they know that they are lying to themselves. And that thought, that realization is terrifying, because now they can't just walk away from their emotions like they used to. Now they can't just suppress the loss and expect it to disappear. Now they can't just convince themselves that they never cared. Because if that were true, then why do they feel this way? And this is where you hold the power. Because while they are drowning in their own confusion, you are moving forward. While they are spiraling, you are healing. And that is what truly breaks them. Because avoidants expect one thing: for you to wait. For you to be there when they finally decide to come back. For you to keep the door open even after they slammed it shut. But when you don't, when they finally reach that moment where they realize they want you back and you're not there anymore, that is when they feel the full weight of what they lost. That is when the silence becomes unbearable. That is when they understand for the first time in their life that no contact wasn't just about space. It was about transformation. It was about teaching them the one lesson they have spent their entire lives: avoiding love isn't something you push away. Love is something you fight for. And by the time they realize that, the question isn't whether they miss you. The question is whether they have the courage to face themselves and do something about feel they don't feel the loss immediately. That's the mistake most people make. You think the second you walk away, they'll realize what they've done. You think they'll sit there stunned, heartbroken, regretting everything. But that's not how an avoidant works. They don't process emotions in real time. They don't feel grief the way you do. They don't experience loss the way you expect them to. Instead, they suppress it. They bury it. They push it so deep inside themselves that even they don't recognize it. And at first they feel fine, maybe even better. They convince themselves they made the right choice. They tell themselves they're free. They tell themselves that distance was the solution. And in those first few weeks, it looks like they're completely unaffected, cold, detached, unbothered. And you sit there thinking, did I mean nothing to them? But here's what you don't see. Their emotional processing isn't happening now. It's happening on a delay. Avoidants don't just wake up one morning missing you. They don't immediately regret losing you. Their system doesn't work that way. Their brain is wired to push emotions away, to escape discomfort, to convince themselves they're better off alone. But that strategy has a fatal flaw, because emotions don't just disappear. They don't dissolve. They build. They wait. And then when they least expect it, when they think they've moved on, when they think boom, it crashes down on them like a tidal wave. And this is what they never saw coming. Because for the first time, they don't have control over their emotions. For the first time, they can't push it away. For the first time, they feel something they don't understand. And it terrifies them, because now they're forced to sit with it. Now, they can't use you as their emotional buffer. Now, there's no one left to chase them. And this is what truly breaks them. Because their entire life, they've been able to run. They've been able to keep people at arm's length. They've been able to create just enough distance to avoid ever feeling real pain. But your silence, your absence, your complete and total removal from their world, that is what forces them to confront something they never thought they'd have to face. And it doesn't happen in some dramatic movie scene. It happens in the quiet moments, late at night when they roll over in bed and realize you're not there, during a random song that comes on and suddenly they feel a pang of something they can't shake. When they see something they would have sent you, but now they can't. When they reach for their phone and realize there's no message from you. It happens in waves, small at first, barely noticeable, but then stronger, until one day they realize it's not going away. Until one day they wake up and feel something they can't ignore anymore. And let me tell you the real kicker. Avoidants think they're protecting themselves by keeping people at a distance. They think that by creating space, they're maintaining control. But what they don't realize is that this very mechanism, this very habit of theirs, is what leads to their deepest suffering. Because by the time they actually process their emotions, it's too late. You've moved on. You've healed. You've grown. And some leaders who feel abandoned, suddenly they're the ones wondering if they should reach out. Suddenly they're the ones feeling what they made you feel weeks or months ago. But here's where it gets even crazier. Avoidants don't just grieve losing you. They grieve the version of themselves they were when they were with you. Because you see, when they were with you, they felt things they weren't used to feeling. Connection, warmth, depth. Even if they fought it, even if they resisted it, even if they pulled away, they felt it. And now it's gone. And they're left with themselves, just themselves, no distractions, no emotional crutches, just the reality of what they pushed away. And for someone who has spent their entire life avoiding emotions, that is a kind of pain they don't know how to handle. And this is why no contact is so powerful, because it forces them to sit in that emptiness. It forces them to recognize that running didn't save them. It forces them to finally understand that the very thing they were afraid of, intimacy, connection, vulnerability, was the one thing that actually made them feel alive. And by the time they realize that, the regret is unbearable because now they don't just miss you. They don't just wish they had handled things differently. They don't just feel the loss. They realize deep in their core that this wasn't just another relationship. You weren't just another person. And now they're left with a choice they never expected to have to make. Do they reach out? Do they try to undo the damage? Do they admit for the first time in their life that they made a mistake? Or do they sit in their pride and let you go, even though it's tearing them apart inside? And let me tell you something, avoidants aren't used to making these kinds of choices because they've never had to, because before the people they pushed away always came back. But now for the first time, they are the ones on the other side of the door, and they don't know if it's still open. And this is why your power isn't in words. It's not in explaining. It's not in proving your worth. Your power is in silence. Your power is in letting them feel the absence. Your power is in showing them through your actions that love isn't a game. That connection isn't something to be taken for granted. That walking away has consequences. And that if they want you back, it's not enough to just miss you. They have to do something about it. Because by the time they finally process the loss, by the time they finally feel the weight of what they've done, there's only one question left. Are they brave enough to face what they've been running from their entire life? They never saw it coming. They thought they had it all figured out. They believed that distance would save them, that the silence would protect them, that by shutting down, by walking away, by disappearing into their own world, they could avoid the chaos of emotions they've spent their whole life running from. But they had no idea that the very thing they thought would give them control was the thing that would break them. No idea that no contact wasn't just about you stepping away. It was about them finally facing themselves alone without the buffer of your presence, without the comfort of knowing you were always there waiting. At first, they convinced themselves they were fine. They distracted themselves. They pushed everything down. They convinced themselves that it was you who needed them, not the other way around. That you would be the one struggling. That you would be the one feeling the loss. But as time went on, something started shifting. And it didn't happen all at once. It happened in fragments and unexpected moments and tiny realizations that crept up on them when they weren't paying attention. Maybe they saw a reminder of you, a place you used to go, a phrase you used to say, a memory they thought they had buried. Maybe it was a sudden wave of nostalgia, ache they couldn't quite name. Maybe it was just a feeling, an emptiness they couldn't shake. But whatever it was, it started to grow. And then came the second wave, the frustration, the agitation, the restlessness. They found themselves getting irritated over nothing, annoyed at things that never used to bother them, unable to focus, unable to relax, unable to sit in their own skin without feeling like something was wrong. Because something was wrong. But they weren't ready to admit it yet. They weren't ready to face the truth staring them in the face. That the space they created to feel safe was now suffocating them. That the silence they once craved now felt unbearable. That instead of feeling lighter, they felt heavier than ever. But here's the real kicker. They didn't just lose you. They lost the version of themselves that only existed when they were with you. The part of them that softened when you were near. The part of them that opened up, even if just for a moment. The part of them that deep down wanted to be close, even if they were too scared to admit it. And now, without you, they don't recognize themselves. The things they used to enjoy feel dull. The distractions they used to rely on don't work anymore. They keep reaching for something, anything to fill the void, but nothing fits. Because it wasn't just about losing a relationship. It was about losing the connection that made them feel alive. And this is what truly cracks them open. Because for the first time, they can't pretend anymore. They can't run from it. They can't escape it. And they start asking questions they never dared to ask before. Why does it feel like something is missing? Why does the distance that once felt so necessary now feel like a mistake? Why do they keep waiting for a message that isn't coming? And then the scariest question of all, what if they were wrong? What if pushing you away wasn't protecting them, but hurting them? What if they weren't actually better off alone? And now the fear sets in because now they realize they don't have control anymore. They realize that no contact wasn't a punishment. It was a reality check. It was the wake-up call they never wanted but desperately needed. It was the moment they finally had to face the truth they'd been avoiding their entire life, that love isn't something to run from. That connection isn't something to fear. That being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's strength. But here's the thing. Avoidants are wired to resist this realization. They will fight it. They will deny it. They will try to convince themselves that they're fine even as the weight of it crushes them. But the deeper they try to bury it, the stronger it becomes. Because for the first time, they're feeling something real, something they can't just shut off, something they can't just walk away from. And it scares them. It terrifies them because now they're at a crossroads. Do they reach out? Do they try to undo the damage? Do they admit, even to themselves, that they made a mistake, or do they stay silent, even as it eats them alive? And here's where your power comes in, because now they're the ones feeling unmerced. Now they're the ones waiting. Now they're the ones who don't wait if the door is still open. And for someone who has spent their whole life controlling the narrative, that is the most unsettling feeling of all. And that is where no contact changes everything, because it forces them to sit in their own discomfort. It forces them to face the consequences of their actions. It forces them to realize, maybe for the first time in their life, that love isn't something you push away. Love is something you fight for. And by the time they understand that, the question isn't whether they miss you. The question is whether they have the courage to do something about it. They thought they had the upper hand. They thought they were in control. They stayed by pulling away, by going silent, by shutting down. They were protecting themselves. But what they didn't see coming, what they never could have predicted, was that no contact wasn't just about you stepping away. It was about them being left alone with themselves. And that is the one thing they were never prepared for. Because for the first time, there's no distraction, no escape, no emotional buffer. Just them sitting in the reality of what they've done. And let me tell you something, avoidants don't handle that well. At first, they convince themselves they're fine. They tell themselves it's better this way. They bury themselves in work, in hobbies, in anything that can keep their mind occupied. They convince themselves that they don't need anyone, that they've always been better off alone. And for a while, it works. For a while, they might even feel relief. They tell themselves they made the right choice. They tell themselves that this is just how they are, that people always leave, and that's why they don't get attached. But deep down, something is happening that they don't even recognize yet. The loss is creeping in. The absence is getting heavier. And little by little, the cracks start forming. They start noticing things. The silence doesn't feel as peaceful as they thought it would. Their usual distractions don't bring the same comfort. The things that used to be enough solitude, space, detachment start feeling hollow. And that's when it hits them, when they wake up one morning and realize they haven't stopped thinking about you. When they go about their day and every little thing reminds them of you. When they catch themselves scrolling through old messages, replaying old conversations, remembering the way you looked at them, the way you made them feel. And suddenly something they never expected starts happening. Regret. Avoidants aren't used to regret. They're used to running before they have to feel it. They're used to ending things on their own terms, so they don't have to process loss. But this time it's different. Because this time they didn't expect you to be strong enough to walk away. They didn't expect you to actually mean it. They didn't expect your silence to be permanent. And now they're questioning everything. Because if you're really gone, if this really is the end, then what does that say about them? What does that say about the choices they made? What does that say about the love they pushed away? And here's the part that breaks them. Avoidants don't just miss you. They miss the version of themselves that only existed with you. The side of them that opened up, even if just a little. The part of them that felt seen, felt understood, felt safe in a way they never had before. And now that you're gone, so is that version of them. And without it, they feel more lost than ever. Because the one thing they never wanted to admit is now staring them right in the face. They needed you. Maybe not in a way they could express. Maybe not in the way you needed them. But they needed you in a way they didn't even understand until now. And here's where it gets even crazier. Avoidants convince themselves that love is a trap. That attachment is a weakness. That needing someone means losing control. But now they're the ones feeling trapped. Now they're the ones feeling powerless. Now they're the ones who can't stop thinking about what they lost. And for someone who has spent their entire life avoiding emotions, that is a level of discomfort they don't know how to handle. Because for the first time, they don't get to choose when they feel. For the first time, they can't run from it. For the first time, they are being forced to sit with emotions they've spent their whole life avoiding. And this is why no contact is so powerful. Because it forces them to realize that their coping mechanisms don't work anymore. It forces them to see that shutting down didn't save them, it isolated them. It forces them to feel something they never thought they would have to feel. And that is the turning point. That is the moment they start questioning everything they thought they knew. Because if they were so sure they didn't need you, then why do they feel like this? If they were so sure they were better off alone, then why does the silence feel unbearable? If they were so sure they could walk away